So with that, I'd like you to have a warm welcome for Mr. Arizona Boy.
Thank you. I kind of liked talking about iguanas, though, and eating iguanas. We might have to change topics for a little bit. Okay. Okay, so guys, we're going to be talking about surveying methods and Google Earth Pro. How many of you have heard of... Okay. Yeah, we got it. I'm over-prepared.
Maybe yours works better than ours.
You never know, man. So anyway, how many of you have heard of Google Earth Pro? How many of you have heard of Google Earth? So you've heard of both? Or you?
Earth Pro today.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So we're going to go into Google Earth Pro a little bit. We're not going to go into Google Earth. You guys can do that in your free time. It's fun. You can just pull it up on a browser now. You don't even have to download it. But as far as surveying methods go, there are two types of ways to actually conduct a survey. There's surveys and there's inventories. Surveys are very practical and realistic. I say that because you may have a huge area like MacArthur Park, which is where I've been conducting research for over a year now, and it's 438 acres. Now, realistically, you're not going to be able to cover that kind of ground, and chances are, as soon as you do cover those portions of the park, things have changed since you've gotten to other parts of the park. So by conducting surveys in huge areas like MacArthur Park, you can evaluate a species and have realistic goals as far as doing these evaluations. So the big decision is, which one do you choose and why do you choose it? So over the summer, I conducted research on this invasive plant called the Santa Maria. How many of you guys heard of the Santa Maria? Not too many. All right, so you guys are going to be like Santa Maria professionals now, okay? So this plant invades native or red mangrove populations. And whenever it grows in, it has a very similar appearance to the mangroves. Now, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Flepsy, right?
No.
Flepsy? So it's the Florida, I forget the L.
Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council, FLS Florida.
Okay, so then, wow, that was the easiest part. Okay, so basically they make evaluations on all the invasive plants in Florida, just Florida, and it's not a government-controlled agency. It's purely, you are a part of Flepsy, correct? So, you know, my professor who I conduct research with, she was a part of Flepsy. You know, it's like a volunteer organization, and they make these orders to kind of decide which plants are categorized as worse than others. In this case, the Santa Maria is the top tier or the worst invasive, and that's because, as I said, it invades the red mangroves. Now, over the summer, I did an inventory for this plant because I thought it was most important. As you guys all know, I'm sure you guys have all been to MacArthur Park once or twice, right? So most of the park is mangroves, right? So that brings forth an interesting problem here. If you have an invasive plant invading, red mangroves, then that's a real threat, right? So I conducted this full inventory. As you can see here, all these little lines right here are footpaths, right? So I would walk all of these, eventually not including 438 acres. It was more like 303 acres because the park includes the water, and not many invasive plants like water. There are some, but not this plant right here. So
Not salt water anyway.
That's right. So basically, I walked this entire park, and I found out there was only one spot that this plant was at, and it grows into a full-blown tree. Whenever I got there, there was one solemn tree that was in there, and it was already dropping seedlings, so on and so forth. But like I said, this was probably, I don't want to say it's a waste of time. There is no waste of time whenever you're trying to evaluate a park. But as an inventory, I wasted a lot of time walking through the park only to find out that it was only in this one location. But you can't really figure these kind of things out with just a survey because it was only in this one single spot. If I evaluated that one spot in a survey, then I would make estimates that it should be covering a lot more of the park than it actually was. So in this case, it actually came out to be pretty useful, but in the long run, there wasn't that many. But we did get it under control, so that's all settled. Could it come back? Possibly, but the park is working to contain it now.
Grows with the mangrove.
Yes.
If I could clarify something on that also, It has been found in other areas, but usually along the coast.
Yes.
Even on the back end of the dunes, it's escaped in there as well. It's a salt tolerant
It's a very coastal plant.
So
coastal
it'll
plant.
grow in the sand too, not just in the water.
Yes, so like certain sediment, it'll promote it more than others.
And just to clarify a little bit about the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council, it's a nonprofit organization that's comprised of a lot of land managers, members of the academic community as well as just interested persons. So it's, but when they do, they try to take a scientific approach with information about whether a certain species has become problematic in an area, and then they decide whether, you know, they have a set of criteria now. It was a little looser before, but now they have a set of criteria to help determine whether it's should be listed as Category 1 invasive, which displaces the native plants, or Category 2, which is just, it's become more prevalent and has, you know, there's a threat of it becoming a bigger problem.
Right. And just to clarify as well, like with the categories themselves, they're still invasive. So one may be categorized as worse than the other, but again, they're still invasive. And that fine line to decide between Category 1 and 2, I don't know. I feel like it's like, I don't know, overbearing a little bit with it. That's what Dr. Owen agrees with as well. Like it just, and by the way, Dr. Owen is actually an ecology professor at FAU. I've been working with her for all of my research. But this plant this one was originally a Category 2. Now it's gone to a Category 1. The next plant I'm going to discuss with you is actually a Category 2 now, but it was previously a Category 1. So it's kind of like a spectrum. It goes back and forth. And I wouldn't really say, would you say that there's a really fine line, or can it go back and forth?
Normally, they evaluate it, and then of course, based on the criteria, they say, okay, well, do we see this as, you know, still a major threat? You know, so maybe through management and other things, it might change. Most of the time, it doesn't, but it doesn't mean it can't.
Right.
It also has no regulatory teeth. There is nothing regulatory about it at all. So just because it's listed there, the things that are regulatory are the state laws and rules that are there, not this list that they come up with. They review every 2 years and consider any other things that are recently changed. There's like over 130 species now. About 90% of them are in South Florida somewhere, whether it's from here down to Miami or the Keys. And but you know, it has no enforcement capabilities. But there are people who use that as a means of getting funding to treat them. So it's kind of a fine line in a couple of different ways as far as that. But no, it's not absolute that once it reaches one spot, it stays there forever. They do review it, especially if some people say, hey, you know, you've got this listed as Category 1. I just don't see it. You know, what is, you know, would you reevaluate, or this is my thoughts, or whatever. So they will consider petitions that come across the board.
Right. And that's why whenever I say if there's a Category 1, it could be a Category 2 now. It all depends. Whenever I was doing research on the Santa Maria, I went to the University of Florida, and it said on their site for their journals, it said that it's a Category 2, whereas FLEPC was saying it's a Category 1 now. So sometimes whenever FLEPC makes these changes, some organizations, you know, they feed off of these decisions, and sometimes they don't update them as fast as FLEPC, and there's confusion. So the real key thing here is you want to check out FLEPC if you have any doubt, and just make sure that it's a Category 1 or 2. But at the end of the day, it's still an invasive. So just don't, you know, say, oh, it's a Category 2, so it's not a big deal. Right. So if you guys wanted to know a little bit more about my research at MacArthur Park regarding this plant, any questions about inventories or the plant itself?
You did just an inventory, you didn't do the survey method, or you only did inventory, not survey method for this?
In this case, it was only an inventory.
Because you only found that one.
Right.
Was it just one plant or one patch of plants?
So if you look, it's kind of hard to actually see it. All right, it's really hard. This little area right here, there's a spread, and it looks kind of like an X if you can follow the little dot.
Okay.
And there's a spread, but it all started about right here. And if you can look right there, it's kind of hard to see that. let me see. Here it is right here. So this is where the area is. What road is this, guys? You see this? A1A. Now, we didn't draw a conclusion as far as how this plant got there. We believe it's from a land crew possibly escorting the plant out of the area, but it's right off of the road. And that's one of the conclusions that we made in our research, that perhaps it just came off of a car. This plant it's palatable by a few species, but we didn't see it anywhere else in the park, so we can't conclude that it's really a species that's really delivering this plant around the park. It could happen,
Can it
but...
come over by seed from the ocean?
Now, that is a good question. I can't answer right now.
Because a lot of seeds travel across the ocean from island to island.
So if you look right here, I guess I can, in this case at MacArthur Park, we checked out this island as well. Right, and this is Munyon Island right here. Now, if it was true that this is traveled by sea, then you would expect partially that it may have approached the island. And since we only found it inland, right by A1A, we concluded that it's more likely that it came off of the road.
Water on the other side of that yellow, that, not the dark part's not water.
This is all water right here.
You say you got it right off the road.
So I understand.
So this,
It can't be?
No, because otherwise it would have spread.
right,
Since it didn't spread in conclusion, it probably doesn't transport by water.
right.
If one, I know that.
So in other words,
I thought if one seed just landed right there.
it's possible. I mean, let's say, for example, it was eaten by a bird, for example, and we all know, seeds are transferred in that way, in the most beautiful way of life, right? For example, if it landed here and ended up on the coast. It can happen, but chances are, because we didn't see it anywhere else along this coast here, it was less likely for that to happen. So,
One other possibility there too is it's also close to a neighborhood. If they have some in their neighborhood.
That's right.
Yeah, plants in their yard.
And the seeds are kind of maybe about this big, right?
that's right. They're very...
About this big.
Oh.
So most birds wouldn't bother with something like that big, but small mammals might.
If you can see this right here, here's the seed right here.
Well, somebody could have gone to the, I saw them on Grenada last year when I was there, and somebody could have picked up seeds and good spices, Grenada's
Yeah.
the land of spices, and brought it back.
And then there's all these variables of how that may have happened. There's just so many variables, you can't really conclude how it entered the area. And that was my first thought, that because it is used as a common landscaping tool, despite being a Category 1 invasive, I believe, like 90%, 95% of, gardens at like Home Depot, so on and so forth, they sell invasives.
Yeah, they do.
So, but they used it as a landscaping tool for the longest time because it's a hardy plant. It's a really good tree.
Sell the invasives, though.
I mean, they look pretty.
That's a complicated question. We'll talk about after we're done with this.
Yeah.
It's like the pet trade. Why do they let them, bring,
It's-
pythons?
Well, you were just saying iguanas out in the garden,
Yeah, exactly.
But it happens. So, but anyway, from there, we're going to go into a Category 2 invasive, which I'm sure some of you have possibly seen, the oyster plant. In fact, if you guys were looking, you might have found some outside walking in.
What were they? Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
So currently, I'm actually managing a class of 25 students right now. I'm their mentor. That's probably a good thing. We'll see at the end. But what we're doing is we're evaluating this plant in a survey. And if you saw this before, this is the survey area. And that was, I'm going to jump us back a little bit, right here at this portion of the park, just a little bit further away from where the Santa Maria was, just so you can have a little perspective on where that was. So this area, this plant, oyster plants are very, like I said, they're hardy as well. Most invasive plants are. They can survive in these environments that are otherwise, undesirable. And the park staff contacted me and told me, hey, we found this plant in this area, and we'd like you to check it out, maybe estimate the density of the plant. Now, you can do that with certain techniques like point quarter samplings. Now, point quarter samplings are a little bit complicated. We'll go into that in a little bit. But what we did was we evaluated the small area where he told us the plants were, and we just did it this past weekend, and we found that it was only in a small area right here. So we're going to probably evaluate just a couple more on the outskirts. I don't know if you can see these numbers right here. 0.2, 1, 6, 7, that's where it all was. So our estimated area was a little off and a little bigger than necessary, but we're going to be thorough with it and make sure that it's not moved over to the right. But this is a good example of why you would want to use a survey, because this plant, you want to measure the density, but it's also a plant that can live pretty much everywhere in the park, and you're going to have to go do an inventory like I said previously. But even then, whenever you're done in this area, you want to be able to go and check the progress of your removal. So luckily, we believe that the plant hasn't grown out farther from this area. We may evaluate in this area over here. That would make more logical sense over here, after conveniently making all these points over here.
Go west.
That's right. So other than that, yeah, without.
Plant communities, it doesn't all.
That's correct. So the difference between Category 1 and Category 2, Category 1 invasive plants, they're known to alter native plant communities, whereas Category 2, they do not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No more of a ground plant.
So like I said previously, the oyster plant, it was actually a Category 1 originally, but it's been since moved down to a Category 2. Now you have to ask yourself, now, does that mean that the oyster plant, it started invading plants but it just stopped, or does that mean it never really actually invaded the plant communities to begin with? And that's, like I said, going back to the spectrum where you have to decide whether or not it's doing those things.
Well, even if it has invaded those natural areas, it may just be maybe it was not to the extent of altering those communities.
Altering the plant communities. And we're in progress right now with the actual research. We'll finish probably by the beginning of December. And yeah, we've already removed we haven't weighed the bags, but maybe like 30 garbage bags, full hefty carpenter bags of the plant, and the area was completely covered in it. So we'll be keeping busy with it.
Yeah, because when I was there, I saw tons of it.
Yeah. This area is
I see
purely...
that in a lot of places.
It's also used as a landscaping tool. I see it driving into my neighborhood. It's really pretty, just walking into the woods.
Pretty.
This area, it's just, I'm colorblind, but it looks beautiful. I mean, I can see all the vibrancy from the purples, and it looks incredible. But
So have you done at least a rough guesstimate what kind of cover that these had done? We just finished talking a little bit about percent
Right.
cover. Any idea, was it like 50% cover where you were working, or less than that, or more than that?
so in these areas right here, just on this side of the quadrant, that area, at some points they were really bad, and then other points they weren't. I would say in the worst areas it was about 90 to 95%. It was bad. And this plant, if you guys haven't known, it actually grows in trees as well. So dead trees, it actually grows right up inside the middle of it, and they pop right out. So that was another problem that we were running into. And they're incredibly difficult to remove. So whenever you remove these things, you have to remove every piece of the plant. Whenever you pull it up, you got to pull all the roots out because it'll grow right back. If you leave cuttings, it'll grow back from the cuttings. Exactly. So it's a very resilient plant.
And I want to point out that Arizona mentioned that they put them in plastic bags. This is one of those plants that you don't want to compost. It's not going to compost well. It's just going to spread it to the next person that tries to use that mulch. So you're better off bagging it and putting it out with the trash.
All right. I mean, the best compost you can get out of it is if you burn it. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, you guys have had 2 examples of inventories and surveys. Now you have to decide which method is really best for you. And I'm sure you guys have a good idea of that. You guys are all from different parks, I'm seeing. So let me see. So there's 2 types of software that you can go into with GIS. You guys went into GIS already with Ms. Lockhart, just a little bit. So GIS is used for many different applications. I was speaking with my grandfather a few days ago, and we have a sprinkler system that is really inefficient. So some areas get water, some areas don't. But you can use GIS technologies to figure out where you want your sprinklers in your yard to actually get full ground coverage. It's not just for invasive plant removal. The county uses it for signs and where they designate where signs are, and they designate routes with it. It's just a really good mapping software, and you can use it to evaluate your property and have a running database of all the things on your property and where they are. So I have 2 applications here that are pretty commonly used. There's ArcGIS, which I'm sure many of you have heard of already. I don't like it. It's not my favorite. Does it mean it's not good? No, it's just a preference. And then there's Google Earth Pro, which is what I became familiar with for my research. Now, part of it's because it's free. I did have an application, or I did have the rights to ArcGIS whenever I tried to use it. I was spending way much more time on it than I really wanted to. It just wasn't being very efficient. So I felt that Google Earth Pro would be a good tool to use for the time I was using it and for my application. Is there going to be other applications where you could use ArcGIS? 100%. But Google Earth Pro, like I said, it's free. You can learn with it. And if you want to move on to ArcGIS, move on to ArcGIS. Everything you do in Google Earth Pro is actually transferable to ArcGIS. So that's one cool thing about it. And if you're unsure, there you go.
The Google Pro, that'd be real time, is the ArcGIS real time too? Because I know Google's always updated.
Right.
Yeah, but how often?
Aerial pictures, like right now, the one I'm looking at in this area is from March 2017.
They're pretty frequent.
They're pretty frequent.
Yeah.
Because we use GIS on what program for City of TV.
And it's really good. It's a good software. I know it also it's very less intuitive, right? So like, it took me a long time to learn how to use it. And by the time I learned how to use it, I worked so hard to make those footpaths I showed you guys earlier. And I made one mistake, and for some reason I couldn't find the undo button, and it was just game over. I'm like, nope, we're done. We're gonna try something else. Yeah. And that's just, I mean, this stuff, it's very finicky to begin with, but Google Earth Pro has a very easy undo button, and mistakes are openly accepted with it. So, so in case you guys didn't hear originally, it's good for footpaths. It's good for making survey points. The survey points referring to the point quarter sampling with the points on the actual map. It's good for importing your own coordinates from your GPS device straight into Google Earth and having your real-time map of where everything is. And like I said previously, you can document the presence of plant species in certain areas.
Is the resolution, does it variable, and what is the resolution?
The resolution in regards to?
Well, like for the smallest pixel, how much area of the Earth does that cover?
So it's very precise with your actual Google or with your GPS coordinates, right? And whenever you drop the GPS coordinates into the software, which it does automatically, you don't have to worry about it, it's very, very precise. Now, if you're measuring a certain area, there may be some miscalculations with...
No, that's in regard to where you are, the latitude and longitude.
Correct.
I'm just talking about the resolution of the image itself.
The images are pretty good. So I would say, I mean, if you're getting down to like a fine point, then it may get a little grainy. But for the purpose, I mean, it all depends on what your purposes are.
Is it for your yard, for example?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's really good. You have to be pretty, I mean, you have to practice with it a little bit to get it down to that level, but it's pretty rewarding. Did anybody have any other questions with Google Earth Pro right now? Okay. So, and like I said earlier, Google Earth Pro is not Google Earth. Google Earth is a more consumer or educational tool, whereas Google Earth Pro is, as the name implies, it's a professional tool. People use it for GIS, people use it for mapping, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of things that Google Earth has, but it doesn't have as much as Google Earth Pro. The one downside that I have to say to you guys, full disclosure, is Google Earth Pro is no longer supported as of 2015. Does that mean that there's no more aerial images going into the database? No, it's still constantly getting updated. But along with this software, Google has actually released a lot of software, photo editing software, so on and so forth. And all of it's free now. This used to be, I think, $200, $250. It's not supported as in Google does not constantly update this software anymore. It's there to stay. They're not going to make interface changes or anything. So it will update its aerial imagery, and it has, but it's not going to change buttons and switch things around on you. Like, I don't know if you guys have like iPhones, but with the new iOS updates, I always have to like relearn a couple things and get really mad about other things. Exactly. So that's not going to happen with you guys. And again, that was also a measure to make it free as well. All right, so we're going to get down to the actual interface. This is what the Google Earth Pro interface looks like. It's pretty simple. And
Sorry, I have,
yes, sir.
When we talk about over time, for example, Chris was mentioning that, she saw surveys of Pine Jog Environmental Center from years ago. Can you get older images?
Yes. So if you look right here, in this window right here, there's a toolbar at the very top of the window. This is your favorite toolbar. If you guys are familiar with like Microsoft Word and so forth, you'll have the file up here, edit, view, all these other things right here, but this is what you really want. Now, this tool actually, or the toolbar broken down, is all these things over here. Now, ordinarily, I'm waiting for Chris to get mad at me for Xing out the polygon, but Dr. Owen and I were actually mapping a polygon of where the plants were, and with this software, I don't think it's really that efficient. If you do it, if you actually map it with your GPS and then import your GPS findings onto there, it's much, much more precise. It just looks really not a fan. But just starting from the top, hide sidebar, that's your worst enemy right here. You don't want to do that. You can, it's just not necessary. You can add a place mark, which is this guy right here. And a place mark can be used to reference a specific area, like let's see, right there. So I use several place marks right here to designate all the points. There's one giant one right here to symbolize the center point from where I wanted to start. So that's a place mark. Okay. So the path is this actual area right here where you can actually define your boundaries of a property. That's especially good. If you saw my footpaths, that's what I use primarily for the footpaths. You can designate your area and make sure you don't go out of the area whenever you do your mapping.
Does that snap to perceived lines, or is that all free form?
It is free form.
So you had to draw the line to make sure it was straight.
Correct. Now, that's one of the cool things about this one as well. We actually have a ruler over here, so you can actually measure that area very easily whenever you do that. Now, if you have any doubts about it, like I said, sometimes the ruler is a little off, but the difference is really minuscule. We've already attempted it, and I used it even in my front yard, because I am doing the little sprinkler system idea, but it's minuscule. So, let's see. And as well, if you want to mark the corner boundaries on your property and then import those, like I said previously, little flags will show up on the 4 points, and then you can work from there. So, like you said earlier, you can also show historical imagery. Now, the historical imagery, it's Google's database. So they have a lot of imagery. I don't know if I can show you that today because we don't have internet in here.
We do.
Okay. It's a passcode.
So that will that go back to the same place you designated, or do you just have to go back to the previous year and re-find where you were?
You can go to whatever year you want as long as it's in their database. So it's not like...
You have to go the year first and re-find where you... No? Find where you are? So,
right.
Well,
it's kind of... All right, it's a little easier to show if I had that internet. I'll try to hook it up, and whenever we're doing our exercise a little later, I'll get it set up so I can show you more. But right here, that is G right here. It basically opens up and it gives you a timeline, and it gives you a full timeline of all of the database. So as long, I mean, you can go back, I think for this area, it went back to like 1979, which may not be far enough. It may not be what you want, but I think it was 1979. And one of the more useless tools that I saw was show sunlight, because, I mean, we all know where the sun's going down, right? You guys don't need to know where it's going. That's right. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Most of the imagery that you saw on this PowerPoint was actually saved from within this application, which is great, because most of the time whenever I'm using other software like ArcGIS, I had to actually take screenshots most of the time if I wanted to show what I was doing. And it's like I said, it's time consuming. You can do it. Some of them may actually be better, but in this case, it wasn't going to fulfill the purpose that I needed it for.
So did you, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Say that you can zoom in close enough that you can identify specific...
No. So this software is more so for data interpretation or before you go out into the field. So whenever you go out into the field, you take a GPS out and you evaluate using evaluation methods like the point quarter sampling. And whenever you take those samplings, you'll be able to indicate, where those areas are, and then take those areas from your GPS, into the software, and you'll have an idea of where it is. It does not have, like you said, what's your name?
Scott.
Scott, okay. You're the only person I know in here now. That's not good. That's cool.
But if you know where the plants are,
Yes, ma'am.
I am battling with an HOA over carrotwood trees that were planted all along the perimeter of the development years ago.
Yeah.
And I am battling to try to get them removed. So I could use this. Would this give me the specificity that I needed to be able to say, well, here they are on my property, but here they are on the one across the street?
100%. So in the case of a carrotwood, if it's a full-blown tree, you'll be able to see it with not that bad a resolution. You'll be able to indicate it. You can drop place marks on where it is and show it to your HOA. No problem at all. Now, whenever you said species, I thought you started talking about like oyster plant and like individual, like, no, you can't see like little tiny stuff, but trees,
I see a row of carrotwood trees.
100%.
Trees you can see, probably not ground plants so much.
Like you can see palm trees, so on and so forth, but you could
That's
see.
a bigger argument if I can prove that
Exactly.
they're not just on my property line, but that they're on everybody else's as well.
Right, and that's a great example of another application you can use it for. So you can use it to battle your HOA, you can use it for sprinkler systems. It's not just, for, doing your own scientific research. You can use it in everyday applications. I could make a map of where, like, I don't know, like there's a lot of Santa Maria going up the coast. I can make a map and indicate where all the Santa Maria are right up the coast. Because it was still planted there, they're just not getting removed. I mean, if you go to the closest Publix over there by MacArthur Park, there's actually just Santa Maria just planted right there in the parking lot. And they can be told, but you have. Exactly, there you go. But you know what happens, then they drop the seeds, they drop them on your car, and then you know what happens? You bring them home with you. So we talked about the place marks, the adding the pass. I did make a little video so I can help you guys kind of, visualize how to do all this stuff. I was listening to some music whenever I was doing it. Can you guys see that pretty well, or do you want me to make that bigger for you? It put the music on, like, the PowerPoint. Do you guys like Grease? Yeah. I was listening to Frank Valli, like the intro song. I like it. It's pretty good. Let's see. Can you guys see that a lot better now?
Yeah.
Cool. No Grease, though. All right. Okay. So anytime you want to start off with a location, you have this giant earth in front of you, right? It looks really overwhelming and all. But what you can do is you enter in the search bar right up here and specify where specifically you really want to go. And then what it immediately does, it ends up zooming in right into your desired location. You can hit, the West Palm Beach post office. You can put MacArthur Park, and it'll bring you right to that specified location. Now, it's very, very specific. So if you say like Deals Gap, North Carolina, there's probably a few more Deals Gaps. It may pop up something else. You want to be as specific as possible, okay? So this is where we are right now. We're at Mounts Botanical Garden, and we're in this building here. And we want to evaluate this area, right? So to begin with, we're going to want to drop a place mark, and that was up here, right up here, the little thumbtacks, right? Just to give yourself a nice starting point. So you create your place mark, and normally there's a window that pops up. It doesn't show whenever you're recording video, but you can decide what you want it to actually write out, and I know it's a little small here, but it actually reads out Mounts Botanical Garden, right?
Did you record video with a separate tool, or is this also within Pro?
This is with a separate tool.
And what was that, Cammedia?
It was just with Windows. Windows has a new tool now. But whenever you make those thumbtacks, every single time you do anything on the software, pass, anything, it pops up in this little window right here. They will never go away if you save them. So you can make your evaluation. Like, for example, you found the carrotwood in your neighborhood, right? You can have that on your Google Earth Pro and then evaluate other areas of the neighborhood. And then add those on, and then have other plants. And then you can have a full readout of what is actually present in the park or your home. So it's pretty good. It's good for I mean, long-term surveying. You can actually see where it was to begin with, if it's still there, so on and so forth.
For drilling down.
Exactly. Now, and whenever you see this case right here, you can make a full boundary right here. It's a little hard to see, like I said, but you can actually refine the area to whatever you like it to. We all want to go to the garden area over here, but we're just going to stay really particular with the actual building, right? So you see it's building all of it, going all the way around. You can do that in any case. You can do it at your home. You can do it at the park. You can use it for footpaths. It's just a general line. And every single line you make, every single line, it keeps track of the actual distance in real time. And you can go back and actually see the full distance of these lines. So if there's any doubt on one side of your property, you have it there, right? And it is there to stay. So now we're going to talk about actually deciding a survey area or an inventory. We already pretty much figured out that we're going to do that small little area right here. Let's see. In this case, let's say we're not going to do an inventory, right? We're not going to go to the full garden. We're going to do a small survey. So you can create your actual areas to do like the point quarter sampling, which again, I'll explain to you guys whenever we go outside. And you can actually decide where you want to evaluate certain areas. Now you can go more into depth and actually create quadrants and decide how big of an area you actually want to establish. For my point quarter sampling at MacArthur Park, I made sure that I had lines or quadrants that were all 34 by 34 meters. That's a pretty big area. And overall, I think it turned out to be like 29,000 meters squared for an area. And like I said, you can just designate, so on and so forth. Doing the thumbtacks bit, it's just really tedious, but you have it all documented at that point. Let's see. And then after that, you go and evaluate your plants, right? You go to the area with your GPS. Now, most GPSs, they have the ability to leave a waypoint. Now, you can take these waypoints from the actual GPS, put it into the PC or the computer, and have a real representation of where everything is. So I showed you that earlier with the Santa Maria here. You have this full-on map over here, but then you have a more specified area right here. If I can get it to work. Right here. See? Now, you can delete these. They're not permanent. You know, you can leave them there. Let's say you eliminate the population. You can delete all this stuff. It's really what you want it to be. It's a really good software, really intuitive. And we're going to give it a shot. So for the next 25 minutes, I know I mentioned that there's some oyster plant outside. I want you guys to go ahead and walk around, check out where the oyster plant is. We're going to take those findings and we're going to import them into the GPS or the Google Earth Pro. And then we're going to see how severe it is. Now, I was debating on doing the point quarter, but it may just be a bit too much as far as importing it into Google Earth for right now. So,
That's quite all right. We're going to do a point center quarter exercise next week.
there you go. So you guys will experience that next time. But those findings you can import into Google Earth Pro. So let's go ahead and go on outside, and we'll give it a shot. All right, guys.
All right, if we can have your attention, please.
All right, so we went out there, we found the plant. Now we have all the waypoints in the GPS. Now what you can do is you go up here to
Whoa. How did you get that file?
this file right here. I'll walk you right through.
Do you have your GPS hooked up?
Yeah, I hooked the GPS right up to the computer.
So it's just a file on the computer, recognize it as a device.
Right.
Okay. And I assume you can import that to the.
Right. So once again, we're going to go through it right here. If you can see right up here, at the file section right up here, that's your next best friend. The toolbar is your first best friend, but this one's like your second best friend. You go down to import, and then you go down to go find your Garmin. In this case, you can go to the GPX, and this stuff is, it's on a case-by-case situation, so with your GPS it may be different. but in this case, it has it actually documented for 26th of October. And we will do this right here. And you can decide what it exactly does. I usually just leave it at the default.
What is that?
All of that, they were just formatting stuff, so you can decide whatever you want in that case. So as I imported it, it literally brought me all the way down to the exact point. It's catching a little bit on the resolution. It won't be like that in a moment. You can see, it's probably the internet right now. You can see it's getting a little better up top as it's coming down right here. It doesn't normally do that, but that has to do with the Wi-Fi here.
It also has to do, if you zoom in closer, it takes it a lot longer to get to a finer resolution.
See, like on my computer at home, usually it just jumps right onto it, but yeah, but like I said before, the resolution, the closer you get, the more grainy it gets, but it's really precise with it. Maybe whenever I'll let that load for a little bit. You guys saw how you import it for the most part. Let's see. I know, too many windows. Let's see.
Well, believe it or not, this is a newer internet thing than we used to have a year or so ago. So I'm grateful that it's.
Oh no, I'm not complaining. I'm trying to figure out why it's taking me.
Good.
I'm not complaining.
Better than what we got at Glassy Water. Nothing.
Yeah. All right, so we went out and we checked out where the oyster plant is. It's currently updating. There's another cool thing you can do with Google Earth Pro, and that's actually 3D modeling. Now, I mean, I have to be honest with you. I don't know what you're going to do down here in Florida with 3D, with terrain. I mean, if you want an example of Florida terrain, I'm going to give it to you right here. Just well, now up in Central Florida, Northern Florida, but like where I'm at for MacArthur Park, it's just not. It's not convenient.
Well, we learned from
The sand dunes?
Dr. Chris Lockhart about how sensitive many of the microflora ecologies are to elevation.
Now this is true.
They are.
Difference can make inches.
Inches can make a big difference.
Now here's the thing, with this software, those inches are very, yeah, they're inches. So, like, I had to take this. You can see how much elevation is going on here. This is in North Carolina. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's the Tail of the Dragon, perhaps. We drove over that this summer. Basically, it's called the Tail of the Dragon. It's 7 miles, and I believe it's 312 or 311 curves. Most people have to take, like, nausea medication for it. Yeah. But basically, you can see it right there. The road goes winding up right here. It translates down into this with Google Earth Pro immediately. So you can see that on Google Earth Pro, easy. But you can take that and actually have a full map of your terrain and see where exactly your data points can actually fall on to those areas. Now, going back to what I said about Florida, the elevation is important. So certain plants like Melaleuca, for example, it can grow in areas like the wetlands or the glades, right? And one of the experiences that Dr. Owen ended up telling me about was they wanted to figure out if raising the water level may kill off the Melaleucas. And they eventually found out it was not really the case. It doesn't work like that. But during that process, they were able to see and map the areas to see parts of the glades where other portions of it were going down deeper than others. Some areas promoted growth for other plants. And I think that was probably the most conclusive elevation check in Florida. Was that correct? That's what she was talking about. So it may be the most accurate elevation check in Florida. But again, it's important, but maybe not as useful in certain areas like where I'm conducting research over at MacArthur Park, where it's just, like I said, it's just a flat paper. It's not, there's nothing to it. So, with all that being said, there's a lot that you can do with Google Earth Pro. It's not like a miracle software. It's not going to, solve all your problems, but you can use it for a lot of data interpretation. Now, some of the issues that I've ran into it, and what I just found out about is it can crash. I've never ran into that personally, but these things happen. One of the big issues that I ran into whenever I first started my research was the compatibility with this specific GPS device and Google Earth Pro. At first, I did all this work, I created all the footpaths, and one would say, oh, well, why didn't you check to see if it was compatible first? I didn't do that, okay? I like to make things really difficult for myself. But in doing that, I learned that there are workarounds for it. So in this case, if it's not compatible with your GPS, to import things into your GPS, because once again, you can take all of those footpaths from Google Earth Pro, transfer them into your GPS, and follow the tracks actively in the field. Basically, you use these softwares like GPS Babel and Easy GPS, where they can reformat it and make it work. Now, if you guys are planning on using this with a GPS in the future, I'd write these down because this stuff is not easy to find. Like this GPS, it works with one format. It's not really user-friendly with Google Earth. But with these softwares, you can actually make it compatible and make it work with it.
So GPS Babel is kind of like a generic translation tool.
Yes. It's like a converter. So that's the purpose of GPS Babel, and then Easy GPS takes that converted file and imports it into your GPS more easier. So it's kind of like an import manager, right? But at the end of the day, that's really the only issue that I ran into with using Google Earth Pro. There hasn't been any other issues. Once you have everything in the GPS, it's easy sailing at that point because you can import it easily into Google Earth Pro. So, with that all being said, let's see if we can see where those flags are. You can see it's still a little grainy here. All right, well, as you can see here, that didn't really work out too well in this case. But whenever you try it at home, chances are it'll work immediately. Yeah. Usually it's actually really responsive. This is the first time I've actually ran into it. And that's partially because I'm trying it at a different location, so on and so forth. So, does anybody have any questions at all? You think so?
Yes.
Very nice. Let's see.
Of all the times it crashed on me. If you have it already pulled up and then load in what you want.
We'll try it one more time. It always takes me time because I always I start it up and then I walk away. So I'm like, I gotta mentally prepare for all the time I'm gonna put into this stuff. I actually did a time lapse of doing this one night because I had to work on it for hours to get stuff ready for the students to go down to the park. And then, of course, I was early, but I wanted to make sure everything was fine. Of course, it was, but it never hurts to be more careful, right? So again, you type in your area that you want to go to. It'll bring you on down to it. We have a winner. Gotcha.
Because if it's loading like a big area and then you're zooming in on it, then it still has to load that big area and it freaks out.
Gotcha.
Versus if you go straight to this, it's only loading what you see.
I'm gonna have to make another slide with that.
Because mine opens. Maybe why mine crashes is because I have K and Z's saved too.
Gotcha.
I use to see conversation areas and stuff. And if I just turn that on, I have to load everything in Florida, it'll crash. But if I'm on the location I need to be and then I turn on the conversation area, then it doesn't,
And like I said, if you want to bring down the files to a more manageable file, because you can actually convert your GPS files into more Google Earth friendly formats.
So when you import now, it's not going to redo it from the globe. It's going to overlay it right where you are.
Exactly. Now you can see I'm going over here on the left side to where my GPS is. And it has, this is how it works with mine. I have it set to all files so it can pick it up because it isn't really user-friendly with it, but chances are more up-to-date GPSs are more compatible with it, wouldn't you say?
We use Trimble, Arc Maps, I'm not really sure.
Arc Maps.
Ours isn't very expensive technology, so.
Okay,
Were
so
those additional waypoints, or the waypoint is, where was that first point? Is that 0?
they start off as 1, but I have many points in my GPS currently from out in the field right now. I'll have to delete these now. Finding oyster plants over here instead of over at the other park. So you can see right here, basically you can have a good layout of where all the plants are. You mentioned you wanted to find out where your carrot woods are. You don't have to go to the area and go through the whole GPS process. You can just drop tags where they all are. Like in this case, if you know that the oyster plant is here, you can drop one of these place marks right here and put it there, right? And you can just move it right there as well.
You should be able to drop emoticons that are like real nasty faces.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
You can do that.
You can?
You can drop pictures.
Do they just attach on as like a note, or?
And you make them as place, like, you can add symbols.
See, that's the thing. I have this GPS here.
We have those.
You have these?
We don't use, no, we have like the really old GPS.
Oh, well, I'm feeling grateful now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the broken screens and.
The originals.
Ooh,
They're really bad. Like you
I have to be
know,
careful here.
like, how many clicks you're going, so you know what you just memorize 3 clicks, and that's where you need to be, because if not, you can't see the screen.
Well, then there you go. Then you can actually.
But in GIS, if you do, like when you load up your KMZ and you make it into a background, and you have all your placement marks, you can change those make marks by symbols and add in pictures.
Okay.
Because we have gopher tortoise squirrels, little pictures.
Okay.
Like a gopher
Oh, that's
tortoise,
cool.
and we have one that looks like a little osprey nest. So
Very nice.
we have to mark.
So you can actually drop that down, and you can do that with Google Earth Pro.
Not that I know of just yet.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. If I find out how to do that, I will shoot that information over to you guys. At this time, I never use that. That actually sounds a lot more useful, though, because,
Put the plant right in.
exactly. So you can actually take pictures of the actual clumps that you're talking about. So, but this is, like I said, just like a real-time situation where you can see where the plants are. I hope that's all been very well explained to you guys. That's it for my presentation. Did anybody else have any other questions?
That was good.
All right.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you explain a little bit about KML files?
No.
What is a
No.
KM?
Would you care to talk about that a little bit?
So when you save this, it saves into a KMZ,
Okay.
and then when you pull it into GIS, you have to convert it to KML, which just converts, like, how you see, like, the details, and it converts into, like, a layer. That's what I, like, understand, but I'm not, like, super good at that. I just know that it converts it over.
So if you had, for example, it's a type of shape file. In order for it to be projected here with the location information and all that, remember, it's geographic information systems. So in order to take that file, it's usually a set of files. For ArcGIS, for example, these are all suffixes. It'll have a suffix of SHP, SHX, and there's a third DBF, a database. So those are like 3 files that are like the minimum number. When you go into something like ArcGIS, it may have a handful of additional files. So depending on the software that you use, it will take those little bitty files, put it all together, and generate what you see here and the information that goes with it. Google Earth Pro has a different set of shape files, and that has a suffix of KML, and that's a special one. That's what it's
Smart, you
compatible
can
with.
add sample images, or you can
Okay.
add web images.
But it doesn't pop up on the actual map,
I
right?
don't know if it makes it like,
I know it can drop layers. I know it can drop layers onto it, or you can create a layer on the map. I remember, you know what, I did do that because I wanted to
because we make
define the boundaries at MacArthur Park. So you can just do, actually right here,
in your, when you do like your placement.
do file real quick, and then
Because I don't use this.
maybe view,
I don't have any of them.
tools real quick, or add. Go to add right here. See, and then you can actually add a photo or image overlay. See?
So I think you might be able to make them into little plants if you had that photo already stored, but I'm not sure on that.
No.
But you can see right there, you
Very
can
nice.
see KMC, KML. These are the little shape files that go, the little files that comprise a shape file. A shape file is a cluster of small files with different suffixes on them.
Do these applications have layering? Like, can you do layers?
Would you show him the layers that you have on there on the left?
So right here, this is what I'm currently doing for research over at the park with the oyster plant. Let's go over there real quick.
You can add a picture, but it doesn't change the icon to a picture, it just adds it to the picture. So-
Gotcha. So you can drop it. So if you go over it, then it'll show the picture,
Yeah,
right?
it'll show the picture. Because if you turn on, down there's a little section that says photos. If you turn that on, you can see like people who've taken sunscreen, like in the you turn the little section
Oh, yeah,
that says
yeah.
photos.
You can see other people's pictures.
Yeah, you can see like there's a photographer who's been taking sunset pictures through the mangroves. They're really pretty.
Let me see. So in this case right here, so what she was basically showing me was whenever you put a place mark down or a waypoint flag, you can add a photo to that waypoint flag, and these are photos right here. So you can see right here. And this is what you can do. You can create that in your area. Let's see. Now, as far as the layering goes, see this right here. This whole file, opens up and then closes with all of that right there. So I can close whatever I don't want to see.
Right, so I could have different plants at different layers.
Right. So like this, for example, I have my Santa Maria plant right here, and that shows up right there. Do you see that? Now we'll zoom into that. We'll get a good view of that.
Would you explain that little bar at the top you just slid over?
This basically just shows how many of the waypoints you want to show at one time. So you can see right here, I have all of them showing right here, whereas at this point, it basically keeps a time log of whenever you create your waypoints. So you can decide whenever you want, or whatever waypoints you want to show from that bar. I like to see all of my waypoints, so I usually just keep it wide open like that. And this is actually the distribution that I showed you earlier. Now you can see it's getting a little grainier the closer we get here. And if you keep noticing, I keep going up to view and then reset, and then I can do tilt and compass. Huh? What do you say? Yeah.
You don't have a keyboard.
I have a keyboard. What is it?
R.
Just R?
Yes.
I'm going to have to try that. Hold on. But you can see right here, you can see the distribution of the Santa Maria a little better now. And it gets better the closer you get. We're going to try R real quick.
R will tilt it and R will
There we go.
put it in north.
So you guys can see that a lot better now. You can also see the resolution as well. You can see it does get a little grainier the closer you get. But if you're looking at a solitary tree, chances are you're going to be able to identify it. If you go there with the GPS and you drop a waypoint, you'll be able to identify it a little better. So that's that.
Add some ground truthing with it.
You mean terrain or?
Well, obviously, if she also had a picture on the ground, to show, yeah, this is what it looks like.
You can do that. Usually it's only available on areas like roads or like neighborhood roads where you can actually see it. So like you can do this with it and it's full imagery right there. See? And that can work over here as well. How Google works is they drive around and they take images all the time with these Google cars. Chances are you've probably seen it. You'd know if you saw it. It has just this giant antenna sticking out of a car, usually a Subaru, kind of funny, but, and then you know, it's, you know,
It has a giant sticker on it, says Google.
right.
Got new cars too, I think it's-
What's that?
One more time.
What were you were talking about, a car with a giant,
So you can see like this imaging, or the imaging here.
they took it,
Basically, they drive everywhere, and then they take images all the time. And they do it all the time. They update their servers all the time.
Let's look at these caribou trees she's talking about.
Well, they don't go usually
What's
into
your address?
HOAs. If you have like a gate, they're most likely not going to.
No.
Right.
But they did come into our reserve. and
Well, let's see what they have.
I got you.
The gate was open.
What's your address? Yeah, let's see if they,
do you mind?
Are you comfortable with that?
You can do mine,
Okay.
13173.
Wait, 1-3.
13173.
But yeah, they'll go over the key.
Yeah, but if there's a
80TH.
need or something, that's a
Yeah,
good
they
thing.
won't know it. They can come into my condo.
And you see, it actually came up here pretty quick. It works just like Google Maps, where, let's see.
Anywhere road they take them.
You're very comfortable with giving your address out like that.
Well, it also can
There's
be
nothing
kind
there.
of,
What's the plan?
it also can be kind of freaky to say, you know, all this information is really out there, where's my sense of privacy?
Yeah.
And, or you might see a car in the driveway and say, oh, that must be about 2 years old, that car died a long time ago, you know? So there's little
That's
things
a
that
little
you can see.
And 1995.
So you can see here, they haven't really updated this area yet. You see how it's flat?
Yeah, they won't.
Unless that's how it is, but I haven't been there.
Ain't no mountains in here except trash mountains. That I know, right?
There you go.
Man-made hills.
Anybody else?
Get rid of all
Any
that
other
lawn.
comments, questions? Would you show us how you converted it from an overhead view to a side view?
So what I usually do right here, this is a scroller, and usually like this guy right here, it's one of those softwares where you just have to tinker around with it and kind of understand.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like she said earlier, you know, the big key here is you want to figure out how to do the tilt, which you can just do R on the keyboard, or like I said before, you go on view, you can do reset, and you can hit tilt and compass. This is your compass up here. This is basically your eye's view, and you can change it by just holding it and dragging it. You can change the direction. Now, as far as this goes, you can actually move on the map with it. It's really not necessary because you can just grab onto the map with your mouse.
Yeah.
But if you want to back up a little bit, zoom out, you use the scroller right here. And in which case, if you want to see someone's house, you can just drop this little man right here anywhere you can see. It'll go right there. And some of these areas, they do have it, like this place right here. See?
Surprise.
Now, the imaging, it's not real time. Like I said, a car has to come through and take photos.
They're normally.
People, yeah, that's right. Some people actually like sit out on the side of the road and they wait for the car to go by, and then they do crazy stuff as the car is going by, and it's there for a good amount of time.
The Google car? Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
You can see the camera.
People dress up, do stupid things.
That's funny.
And it's documented. Like, you can actually look up on Google and say, hey, where's a spot like this? You'll punch in the address and you'll see them still there.
That's
They were
funny.
there.
A little bit of history of even GIS and your GPS handheld. Years ago, it was used primarily for military reasons, and it wasn't released until years later, where there's actually still, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that they still have a delay, a
Yeah.
time delay, because it's only the military that has real-time GPS
Right.
capability.
Yeah, I don't think you can get real time, that I know of.
Yeah, that's
I don't think that'd be okay. Not right now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't want somebody watching my house to see what I'm doing right now. I don't care if they look at it. For
See, clearly you can tell this isn't real time. This is the parking lot right now.
It's done every 6 months or something like that. They're
Right.
out there.
So yeah, does anybody have any other questions? Yeah, you can see when they've actually done it right here. So copyright. Sometimes they take them from the Navy databases. You can import your own maps and see things from,
Oh, I see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yep.